Today, you'll learn lots of vocabulary connected to the word light. And we hope that this podcast will help you widen your vocabulary so that you see this word in a new light. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with nearly 60 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. You're all very welcome, particularly if you're a new listener. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast. Craig, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Excited as usual to be podcasting again with you this week and hopefully spreading some knowledge so that we can help people improve their English. Now, we have had an email from a friend of the show, Pilar, from France. What does she say?
She said, I've just watched a video about light from a scientific point of view, but this made me think about a subject for a future podcast. Light and expressions or collocations with this word.
Always a pleasure to hear from Pilar. I don't know if you remember those lovely chocolates she sent us a while ago.
I do. I
can
certainly
still
do.
taste them. They were amazing.
Délicieux.
So, Pilar, merci beaucoup for your email. And that's what we're talking about today, light. Now, we've divided this podcast into 4 different groups or categories, depending on the way the word light is used. The first one is physical light. So in other words, the literal meaning of the word light. Then we speak about light when it means knowledge or clarity or understanding something. Then we've got another category of light for hope or giving perspective or speaking about positivity. And then 1 or 2 other expressions that we couldn't classify. So we've called that other expressions. So let's get going, Reza, with physical light.
So, first of all, we need to start with a phrasal verb, which refers to a light in a room, indoors. And that is to turn on or to turn off the light. That's the most common way to say it. Some people say switch on and switch off. And also, perhaps a bit more informal, other people say put on the light.
All of those phrasal verbs that Reza mentioned are separable, which means you can put the object in the middle. You can say turn the light on, turn the light off, switch the light off, or switch off the light, or put on the light, or put the light on. Now, if a light is very strong or very intense, you can call it bright light. For example, the bright light from the stage made it hard to see the audience. So any intense light source is bright light.
Natural light is, as it says, light which is not artificial. In other words, produced by the sun or the moon. Yeah, we often forget about that. The sun gives light, but also the moon. We'll talk about that a bit later. So if it's not artificial, it's natural light. For example, you might say, ooh, the room looks much better in natural light, as opposed to using artificial lights.
And light that comes from the moon isn't particularly bright or intense, except maybe if there's a full moon. But if it's a very soft light, you can say it's dim or faint. So if you have a candle, for example, you light a candle, you could try to read by the light of the candle and you'd call that light dim. You can also call a person dim, which means not particularly clever or intelligent. And the opposite of that is bright. So a bright person is very quick, very clever, very intelligent.
Quite the opposite of dim lighting would be blinding light. For example, the explosion gave off a blinding light. The light was so strong, so quick, and so intense that if you looked at it for more than a very short time, you would go blind. So it was a blinding light. which is the case of sunlight, of course. So the light which comes from the sun is sunlight. If you stare directly into the sun for too long, it will literally make you go blind. Never do it. Never look directly into the sun. You need to be wearing sunglasses because it is the ultimate of blinding lights.
And I've noticed a trend on the internet recently. I follow people on YouTube who talk about EDC. Have you heard of that?
No, what's that?
Everyday carry. Things that particularly men, for some reason, tend to carry with them, like small tools or a particular wallet to keep their money and credit cards. And one thing that's very popular, these torches that are LED, and they're making them now incredibly bright, and they give off, that phrasal verb to give off means to emit a blinding light, so many lumens that they actually burn through your pocket or burn through the bag you're carrying them in. Really, really bright. And you can use them as a weapon. If someone attacks you on the street, you shine this bright torch into someone's face to stop them attacking you.
Craig, which do you prefer, sunlight or moonlight?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I have a preference. I prefer sunlight during the day, and I love moonlight. I mean, who doesn't like walking on the beach with a full romantic moon shining down on you?
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have a preference? Moonlight is a lot cooler, isn't it? It doesn't burn so much.
I love the moonlight of a full moon. Whenever you're in a place where there isn't much artificial light, beside the sea or something like that, and there's a full moon, particularly the way it reflects off the sea, it can be incredibly bright, and that's beautiful. And one thing I've learned to appreciate lately that I hadn't even thought about when I was younger, I don't know why, I wasn't paying attention, but you quite often have the sun and the moon out at the same time. Not always, but there are days. And so you're getting sunlight and moonlight. I like that. That it just really reminds me how we're in a universe and we're all on our own, so insignificant. There's the sun on one side, the moon on the other. They're out at the same time. This is just a small dot in the middle of the universe that we're on.
How insignificant we are. True. All of these words that we're talking about at the moment, sunlight, moonlight, they're compound nouns. And another one is daylight, the light of the day. For example, we must finish our walk or our hike before the daylight fades or disappears. Here's a question for you, Rezo. I've checked this morning. How many hours in Spain at the moment are daylight hours?
Well, let me work it out. I would say that the sun comes out at the moment. This is early September. I would say the sun at the moment comes out at around, I'm going to guess about 7, is that half 7, half 7, let's see. And I would say that the sun sets, so there's no more sunlight at about, I'm going to guess about half 8, no, maybe half 8. So half 7 to half 8. I'm going to guess 13 hours.
Whoa, that is incredibly accurate. 12 hours and 52 minutes.
What?
Impressive.
Am I a crack or what?
That's incredible.
I do pay a lot of attention to when the sun comes and goes, actually. But wow, that we did not rehearse that, did we?
No.
I'm 6 minutes out. That is not bad. I have to say so myself.
8 minutes.
8 minutes, beg your pardon. Okay. So, mathematics, not my strong point.
No.
Looking at the sun and moon, yeah, but mathematics, no.
Not only an English expert, but a daylight expert as well. By the way, you can see all of the vocabulary we're discussing here on the website at inglespodcast.com/590.
Another curious thing is how many students, it surprises me, how many students confuse the words sunlight and daylight. They think it's interchangeable, but it isn't. Daylight is the light that you get during the day. But believe me, if you're from Britain or Ireland, as Craig and I are, there can be many hours of daylight, but not much sunlight because the sun is behind a cloud.
Exactly.
They are not the same thing. And another thing that I hear of Spanish people going to visit Britain and particularly Scotland, but any part of Britain or Ireland in the summer, and they come back really shocked. They say, "Wow, it was daylight in at the on the end of June until 11 o'clock." Yeah, of course, of course it is. They can't believe that. Wow, so there's more daylight hours in the UK than Spain in the summer,
but less sunlight.
Less sunlight, but more daylight. The sun sets much later; it comes out much earlier, but it might be behind a cloud because it's further north. But I'm surprised at how many people hadn't thought of that before they go. If you go to the North Pole at the end of June, it's basically daylight 24 hours a day. You're not going to get sunburnt necessarily, but there's a lot of daylight. So sunlight, daylight, not the same thing at all.
Another compound noun is headlights. And you'd find headlights on a car. So to see where you're going, where you're driving at night, you need to turn on your headlights and then you can see the road in front of you. An example sentence, the car's headlights shone brightly in the fog.
Craig already mentioned in this kit that a lot of people carry around, a torch. But in American English particularly, they prefer to say flashlight. That's another way of saying a torch. For example, she grabbed a flashlight to look in the basement. We could say torch or flashlight.
Many compound nouns with light. We've had sunlight, moonlight, daylight, headlight, flashlight, and there's also street light, which are obviously the lights in the street. For example, he waited for her under the street light and they walked in the moonlight, for example.
Backlight is a word which quite often gets associated with smartphones these days.
And computer screens.
And computer screens, exactly. You might say, the backlight on my phone or my monitor isn't working. It's that, how would you describe the backlight? It's hard to actually describe it.
The light at the back, behind the pixels? Maybe?
Behind the pixels.
Screen.
That's it. Behind the pixels. So the pixels are in the foreground and the backlight's behind the pixels. That's it.
And another one is searchlight. If you've seen those films about prison camps in the Second World War, for example, the prisoners escaping and the guard in the tower turns on this really bright light and he's looking and searching for the escaped prisoner. That's the searchlight. So you could say that the searchlight swept across the dark sky. Let's take a quick break here because I know you listen to this podcast to take your English to the next level. But what about your speaking? Is your fluency improving? Are you happy with your speaking skills? My conversation course focuses on making you a more confident and more fluent English speaker. You'll join me and a small group of motivated students, and we'll meet on Zoom and have topical discussions, role plays, debates, and presentations that will expand your vocabulary and help you express yourself effectively in English. So be proactive and take the first step towards becoming a confident and fluent English speaker. Send me an email today to craig@inglespodcast.com and I'll send you details of the next online conversation course. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the podcast.
So they were our expressions of physical light, literal meanings. Now let's talk about the use of the word light as regards knowledge or clarity and understanding. For example, we have the expression in the light of. In the light of new evidence, the case will be reopened.
It's kind of like saying because of, isn't it?
That's what it means, doesn't it? Because of, in the light of, yeah. Imagine this light wasn't turned on before, now it is, and it helps you see something which you didn't see before, metaphorically.
New information, new evidence. Yeah. And you can also highlight or emphasize something by throwing light on something. There are two other words you could use for this collocation. You could shed light on something, which is to illuminate it, to uncover it, or to cast light on something. Let me give you an example sentence. The report sheds light on the causes of the crisis. So now we know what happened. Now we know the reasons for the disaster or the crisis because light has been thrown or shed or cast on the situation.
Another common expression about clarity or knowledge is come to light. For example, several mistakes came to light during the audit. That means they were mistakes which hadn't been noticed before the audit, but they came to light, they got noticed during the audit.
An idiom you can use with light is to see the light. And if you see the light, you finally understand something. There's like a light bulb that has gone on in your brain. So you could say after hours of explanation, he finally saw the light. He understood what was happening. And this is often used when you find religion, isn't it, Reza? You say, hallelujah, I've seen the light. Praise be.
A similar expression, but not quite the same, is in a new light. The word new is important there. For example, the documentary showed the artist in a new light. So maybe you already knew about this artist, but there were certain aspects of his life or his work that you didn't know about, and they may have surprised you. So you can see someone or something in a new light if you're given new explanations or information about something which you thought you knew about, but you didn't quite know everything. Then you see it in a new light.
It's almost like you have a revelation, isn't it? You see something in a new light, like there's a light bulb that goes on in your head. You suddenly realize something, or you suddenly understand something. And there's another idiom which you can use, which is to say that it dawned on me. And dawn is the moment in the morning when the sun rises and you begin to see some light. So you can use dawn idiomatically to say that it dawned on me, which means I realized something. I saw the light, a light bulb went off in my head.
Yes, some people say a light bulb went off, and some people say a light bulb went on. Strangely, have you noticed? But it's the same meaning. A light bulb went off on my head. A light bulb went on my head. You hear both. But with the same meaning.
True,
strangely.
It's true, because in the show notes here, it's a light bulb goes on, but I've just said naturally a light bulb goes off.
And you're right. And they're both used with the same meaning, curiously.
Interesting. It's like this morning I was watching the sunrise and suddenly it dawned on me. No? Okay.
Very good.
We won't include that.
Let's not dwell on that.
We'll take that joke out of the final edit. Let's move on to the section of hope and perspective and positivity. So being positive and being hopeful, you could say there's light at the end of the tunnel. That's a very common idiom and expression. After months of treatment for the illness or the cancer, etc., she could see the light at the end of the tunnel. She's recovering, she's fine, and everything is going to be good.
I would imagine in pretty much all languages there are expressions which dark or darkness is to do with negative things. Lightness is the positive thing. So light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel's dark. That's the bad time. Then the light, that's the good time. It's always dark, bad, light, good, isn't it?
We could say that if you're getting near to the end of your academic year, if you're a teacher, it's, how's work, Reza? Well, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm nearly on holiday.
Another common expression about positivity or perspective, perhaps, is light years ahead. For example, their technology is light years ahead of the competition. Yeah. They have a perspective, they have a way of doing things which nobody else has thought of before. It's light years ahead. No one has come close to inventing such a thing because it's light years ahead. A light year is a unit of astronomical distance, and it's equivalent to the distance that light travels in 1 year. A light year. And if you want to know, it's approximately 6 million miles. So if you shine a light and just let it travel for a year, that's how far it will travel. You can see then, if we say that the technology is light years ahead of the competition, various multiplications of 6 million miles, that's a long distance.
Reza mentioned earlier that dark tends to be negative and light tends to be positive. That's very true. If you look on the light or lighter side of something, then you're being very positive. You're not being too serious. For example, the comedian always looked at the lighter side of life. Some of you may have heard the song at the end of the Monty Python film Life of Brian. He doesn't sing the lighter side, he sings the brighter side. You should always look on the brighter side of life. But it's very similar. Look on the lighter side. Don't be too serious. Be positive. Be happy.
Yeah.
Reza, what's a shining light?
A shining light would be, for example, EnglishPodcast.com. It's a person or thing that is inspirational in a very difficult situation. So you're sitting out there, aren't you, listeners, thinking, how on earth can I improve my English? I really need to improve my English. I can't think of how to do it. I don't have a lot of money. I wish I could have a private teacher that costs a fortune, but I haven't got the money. Ooh, EnglishPodcast.com. I learned so much from them because they're such great podcasters. They're so funny. They're so lovely, Craig and Reza. They're a shining light. They're a thing, or in our case, two people, that is inspirational in a very difficult situation. That is a shining light.
I agree with that, Reza. Another example, you could say that Elon Musk is a shining light in the technology space.
You could, and he is. He isn't such a shining light in other ways, though, but for technology, maybe.
I just threw that in there to annoy you. So speaking of the light at the end of the tunnel, we're nearly at the end of the podcast. So don't worry, we only have one more category to go. And we've put all of the ones that we could not categorize in the section of other expressions. For example, out like a light. That expression means that you are asleep or completely exhausted with your eyes closed. For example, after the long flight from Canada, he was out like a light. So if you're out like a light, to be out like a light, heavily asleep.
Craig, you indeed were in Canada recently and came back. Did it happen to you? Were you out like a light as soon as you got back to your house?
I was out like a light for about a week. I just couldn't stop sleeping. I was so tired because of the jet lag and the exhausting trip back. So yeah, we took cheap tickets and we had to hang around for about 24 hours in various airports to get back to Spain.
Oh, how many connections were there?
There were 2 connections, but there were there was 6 hours in Frankfurt. So we just had to wait there until the next flight, which meant that we were awake for basically longer than 24 hours.
And of course, you dare not sleep in the airport because you might miss your flight. Another expression with light is this: many hands make light work. And that means when a group work together, the task is easier. But hold on a minute. The word light here does not refer to illumination. Yeah, like what the sun emits. No, here the word light refers to the opposite of heavy. In other words, not many kilograms. Yeah, but we threw it in just for a laugh, just to keep you alert and remind you that there are 2 meanings of light in English. Apart from the opposite of dark, it also can mean the opposite of heavy.
And another expression which means the opposite of heavy, using light, is to make light of something, to make light of a situation. And that's to take the importance away from a situation. So if you make light of something, maybe you're making a joke or saying that it's not very serious, it's not important, you're making light of a situation.
To be in the limelight, or you can also say to be in the spotlight, same thing, means to be the focus of attention. For example, many celebrities love to be in the limelight. They love to be talked about. They love to speak to the press all the time and have people gossiping about their lives. They're in the limelight or the spotlight. And it comes from a long time ago from the world of theatre, when before electricity, I can't go into the technical details very much, but they were able to, using lime, which is a chemical, they were able to do something which cast light onto the actor on the stage. And they used chemical called lime, and I'm not quite sure what else, but that was what made this special concentrated light before electricity. And later, after electricity was invented, they started to call it a spotlight. But that's where it comes from. So if you're in the limelight, a bit like an actor in the theatre, you are the focus of attention.
Do you like to be in the limelight, or do you prefer to take a back seat?
A bit of both. A bit of both. I like a little bit of limelight. When I'm with a small group of people, I like the idea that everybody has their say, because everybody has something to say. But if I'm in a big group of people, I prefer just to take a back seat. I don't like the idea of being in the limelight in a group of 20 people. What about you?
The same, yeah. And I've noticed that in you as well. You tend to go quiet if you're in a bigger group. And I think I'm very similar. If you're a smoker, you might ask someone for a light, because if you don't have a lighter to ignite or light your cigarette, then you can't smoke. So you can give someone a light. You can say to someone, could you give me a light, please? You're asking for a light for your cigarette.
The phrasal verb light up is a very common expression in English. And we've divided it into 3 meanings. Let's give an example of each one. The first one is the fireworks lit up the night sky. So it's an irregular verb. It's light, lit. Here we're using the past simple, lit. The fireworks lit up the night sky. In other words, they illuminated the night sky. They gave light to the sky. They lit up the sky.
And if you're very happy, you could say that your face lights up. You suddenly see something that you like. For example, her face lit up when she saw her friend, or my face lit up when I saw the plate of chocolate biscuits. So I became very happy. My face lit up.
And another common use of that phrasal verb is as regards smoking. For example, he stepped outside to light up a cigarette. So he struck a match, or maybe he had a lighter. The lighter is the object that you use to light up a cigarette, to make it start burning.
Well, we've reached the light at the end of the tunnel. We are at the end of the podcast, and it's your turn now to practice your English. Is there a grammar point that you'd like us to talk about? Or maybe a vocabulary area like today with light that you would like us to shed light on? Please let us know if that's the case. You can reach us by voice by sending your voice messages to speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. And there's a link to that in the show notes. And you can also reach us by email. Send your emails to me. I'm Craig, Craig, @inglespodcast.com. Or to Reza, you need to write to Belfast, reza@gmail.com.
And if you're a Spanish speaker and you want to have even more enlightenment as regards the English language.
Very good. Very
you
good.
See what I did there?
Impressive.
Enlightenment, acquired knowledge, let's say. You could look for free or paid resources at the Mansión Inglés website, which is mansioningles.com. And specifically for paid products, you could also browse the online store, which is at store, store, mansioningles.net.
And we can't turn the lights off today without thanking our lovely Patreon supporters who have joined our Patreon program. And by doing so, you get instant access to the transcriptions of this podcast and also a live Zoom chat with me every month so that you can practice your speaking. For more information, go to patreon.com/Ingles podcast.
As always, we want to thank all of our Patreon supporters, and there are quite a few, but we haven't enough time to name them all. So we'll do what we always do, which is to read out the names of our most recent supporters who've just joined this month. And they are Jesus Bilamajo, Sara Fernandez, Schnapperus, also known as Marvin, Amparo Soto, Juanma, and our friend of the podcast, Carmen Roldan. Oh, and I nearly forgot our two very, very, very recent new supporters who are Maria Elisa Alvarez Torres and Pedro. A big thank you to those new supporters and all our supporters of the Patreon scheme.
Reza, what are we talking about next week?
Well, not for the first time, I have to tell you, we're not quite sure. We're thinking about it.
We're in the dark.
Yeah, exactly.
If you enjoyed the podcast this week, please tell your friends. We promise there will be a podcast next week, so send us your ideas and suggestions. But for now, have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you for listening. It's goodbye from Reza.
And goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.